The rain fell in relentless sheets, drumming against the cracked pavement of Lexington Avenue. The diner on the corner, a modest establishment with flickering neon lights, was one of the few places still open at this hour. Inside, the air was warm, carrying the faint scent of coffee and fried food. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly, casting a pale glow over the small space. At a corner table, Serena Carter sat hunched over her notebook, her dark curls pulled back into a loose ponytail. Her brow was furrowed in concentration as she scribbled notes, her pen moving quickly across the page. Serena was 17, a high school senior with dreams that stretched far beyond the confines of her struggling neighborhood. She was determined, sharp, and fiercely intelligent, but life had never been easy for her. Born into poverty, she had learned early on that nothing would be handed to her. Her mother, a single parent, worked long hours as a janitor at the diner, and Serena often stayed late to study while she waited for her mother's shift to end. A scholarship was her only way out, and she was determined to earn it, no matter how many nights she had to spend hunched over her books in this dingy diner. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, its hands creeping toward 11:30 p.m. Serena glanced up briefly, her eyes scanning the nearly empty diner. A middle-aged man sat in the corner, engrossed in a newspaper. A young couple whispered to each other, their heads close together, oblivious to the world around them. The diner was quiet, save for the occasional clatter of dishes from the kitchen and the low hum of the radio playing in the background. Serena sighed and returned to her notes, but a noise outside caught her attention. It was faint, almost drowned out by the sound of the rain, but it was enough to make her pause. She turned her head toward the window, her eyes narrowing as she tried to see through the rain-streaked glass. At first, she saw nothing but the blur of headlights and the glistening pavement. Then her heart clenched. There, under the dim glow of the diner's neon sign, was a boy in a wheelchair. He was huddled under a tattered blanket, his thin jacket offering little protection against the cold rain. His black hair was plastered to his forehead, and his large green eyes were wide with fear and confusion. He looked no older than 10, his small frame trembling as he gripped the edges of his wheelchair. Serena's breath caught in her throat. She scanned the diner again, but no one else seemed to have noticed the boy. The man in the corner turned a page of his newspaper, and the young couple laughed softly at something on their phone. Anger surged within her. How could they sit here, warm and comfortable, while a child was out there shivering in the rain? Without thinking, Serena stood up, pushing her chair back with a loud scrape. She grabbed her coat from the back of the chair and headed for the door. As she passed the counter, a voice stopped her in her tracks. "Don't start trouble, Carter." Serena turned to see Karen, a regular at the diner, watching her with a look of disdain. Karen was in her mid-40s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a sharp tongue. She had never been particularly fond of Serena, often making snide comments about her and her mother. Tonight was no different. "People like you always have to play the hero," Karen drawled, taking a sip of her coffee. "What, looking for pity again?" Serena clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. She knew Karen's type. People who believed that those with money deserved everything, while the poor were meant to be forgotten. But Serena wasn't the type to stay silent. "I'm not doing this for pity," she said, her voice calm but sharp. "I'm doing it because I have a conscience. Something you clearly don't." The diner fell silent. Karen's eyes widened, her lips pressing into a tight line. She scowled, but Serena didn't wait for a response. She pushed open the door and stepped out into the rain. The cold hit her immediately, the raindrops stinging her face as she hurried toward the boy. He flinched as she approached, his green eyes darting nervously. "Are you okay?" Serena asked, her voice soft and warm despite the chill in the air. The boy hesitated, his small hands gripping the tattered blanket tighter. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Someone who doesn't want you to freeze out here," Serena replied with a gentle smile. She glanced around, but there was no one else in sight. "Do you have anyone with you? Where are your parents?" The boy's grip on the blanket tightened, and he looked down at his lap. "My dad told me to wait here," he said quietly. Serena's heart ached. She knelt beside him, her coat already soaked from the rain. "How long have you been here?" The boy didn't answer. but the way his hands shook told her everything she needed to know. She took a deep breath, her mind racing. She couldn't leave him out here. "Come inside with me, okay?" she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "You can warm up and have something to eat." The boy hesitated, his eyes flickering toward the diner's door. But the cold was too much to bear, and after a moment, he nodded slightly. Serena smiled and gently pushed the wheelchair toward the diner. As they entered, the warmth of the heater enveloped them, and the smell of toasted bread filled the air. Serena grabbed a dry towel from the counter and draped it over the boy's shoulders. "What's your name?" she asked as she pulled a chair beside him. "Daniel," the boy replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "All right, Daniel," Serena said, her tone reassuring. "Let me take care of you." She didn't notice the man across the street, sitting in the driver's seat of a sleek black Bentley. Raymond Holt watched the scene unfold with a calculating gaze. He had been observing the diner for some time, waiting for his son to be brought inside. He hadn't expected Serena to be the one to do it. Raymond was a man who believed in logic over emotion. He had built his billion-dollar empire, Holt Dynamics, on the principle that no one does anything without an agenda. But Serena's selfless act of kindness intrigued him. He reached for his phone and dialed number. "Nora," he said when the call connected, his voice low and commanding. "I want you to find out everything about that girl. Her name is Serena Carter. I want her academic records, financial background, family history, everything." There was a brief pause before Nora responded. "Consider it done, Mr. Holt." Raymond hung up, his eyes still fixed on the diner. He didn't believe in kindness, not in the way Serena had shown, but he couldn't deny that her actions had caught his attention. And he was a man who always paid attention to things, or people, that intrigued him. Back inside the diner, Serena sat with Daniel, offering him a warm meal and a listening ear. She didn't know it yet, but her life was about to change forever. The boy in the wheelchair, the man across the street, and the storm that had brought them together were all pieces of a puzzle that would shape her future in ways she couldn't yet imagine. As the rain continued to fall outside, Serena Carter made a choice to help a stranger in need, and that choice would ripple through her life, altering its course in ways she could never have predicted. For now, though, she focused on the boy in front of her, offering him the warmth and kindness that the world had so often denied him. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. The morning after the rainy night, Serena woke up with a sense of unease. The events of the previous evening lingered in her mind like a shadow. Daniel, the boy in the wheelchair, had stayed in the diner until his father arrived, a man who had introduced himself as Raymond Holt. Serena hadn't thought much of it at the time, but something about the way Raymond carried himself, the way he had looked at her, left her feeling unsettled. He had thanked her briefly, his tone polite but distant, before whisking Daniel away in a sleek black car. Serena tried to shake off the feeling as she got ready for school. She had more pressing concerns, her upcoming exams, her scholarship applications, and the constant struggle to make ends meet. But as she walked to school that morning, her thoughts kept drifting back to Daniel. Who was he? Why had he been left out in the rain? And who was Raymond Holt? Later that day, as Serena sat in the library studying, she was approached by a woman she had never seen before. The woman was tall and impeccably dressed, her blonde hair pulled back into a tight bun. Her sharp eyes scanned the room before landing on Serena. "Serena Carter?" the woman asked, her voice cool and professional. Serena looked up, startled. "Yes, my name is Nora Winters. I work for Raymond Holt. He'd like to meet with you." Serena's heart skipped a beat. Raymond Holt? The man from last night? Why would he want to meet with her? She hesitated, her mind racing. What does he want? Nora's expression didn't change. "That's for him to explain. Can you come with me now?" Serena glanced at her watch. She had a free period, but the idea of meeting with a man like Raymond Holt was intimidating. Still, curiosity got the better of her. She nodded and gathered her things, following Nora out of the library. The drive to Holt Dynamics was a blur. Serena had never been inside a corporate building before, let alone one as imposing as this. The skyscraper loomed over the city, its glass facade reflecting the sunlight like a mirror. Inside, the lobby was a sea of polished marble and sleek furniture. People in tailored suits moved with purpose, their voices low and serious. Nora led Serena to a private elevator, which took them to the top floor. When the doors opened, Serena found herself in a spacious office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Raymond Holt sat behind a large desk, his sharp gray eyes fixed on her as she entered. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice deep and measured. "Thank you for coming." Serena nodded, trying to hide her nervousness. "Mr. Holt, what can I do for you?" Raymond leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her feel like she was being weighed and measured. "I wanted to thank you for what you did last night. Daniel is my son, and I appreciate your kindness." Serena frowned. "Then why did you leave him out in the rain?" Raymond's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Irritation, perhaps, or guilt. "That's a personal matter. What's important is that you stepped in when no one else did. That kind of initiative is rare." Serena crossed her arms, her guard up. "I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because it was the right thing to do." Raymond nodded, as if he had expected that answer. "And that's precisely why I'd like to offer you an opportunity." Serena raised an eyebrow. "An opportunity?" "Yes. A full scholarship to the university of your choice, and an internship at Hold Dynamics." Serena's breath caught in her throat. A scholarship? An internship? This was everything she had been working for. But something about the way Raymond was looking at her made her uneasy. She had learned the hard way that nothing in life was free. "What's the catch?" she asked, her voice steady. Raymond's lips twitched, almost like a smile. "No catch. Consider it a reward for your kindness." Serena narrowed her eyes. "I don't believe in rewards for doing the right thing." Raymond leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "Then consider it an investment. I see potential in you, Miss Carter. Potential that could be valuable to my company." Serena's mind raced. She didn't trust Raymond Holt, not after the way he had treated Daniel, but she couldn't deny that this was an opportunity she couldn't afford to pass up. Still, she needed to know more. "What would I be doing as an intern?" she asked. Raymond gestured to Nora, who handed Serena a folder. Inside was a detailed description of the internship program, along with a list of responsibilities. Serena scanned the documents, her eyes widening as she realized the scope of the opportunity. She would be working directly with senior executives, gaining hands-on experience in business strategy, finance, and technology. "This is a lot," Serena said, looking up at Raymond. "You're capable of handling it," he replied. "But I won't sugarcoat it. This won't be easy. You'll be expected to work hard, to prove yourself every day. If you're not up to the challenge, say so now." Serena's jaw tightened. She had spent her entire life fighting to prove herself. She wasn't about to back down now. "I'm up for it," she said firmly. Raymond nodded, a hint of approval in his eyes. "Good. Nora will handle the details. Your internship starts next week." Serena's first day at Hold Dynamics was a whirlwind. She arrived early, dressed in the best clothes she could afford, a simple blouse and slacks that she hoped would pass for professional. The building was even more intimidating in the daylight, its glass walls reflecting the bustling city below. Nora met her in the lobby and escorted her to the intern orientation. The other interns were a mix of college students and recent graduates, all of them polished and confident. Serena felt out of place, but she reminded herself that she had earned her spot here. The orientation was led by Philip Langford, a senior executive with a reputation for being ruthless. He spoke about the company's mission and values, but his tone was cold and detached. When he introduced Serena as the newest intern, the room fell silent. All eyes turned to her, and she could feel the weight of their judgment. "Miss Carter," Langford said, his voice dripping with skepticism, "I hope you're prepared to work. We don't tolerate mediocrity here." Serena met his gaze, her chin lifted. "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't prepared." Langford raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "We'll see." The first week was a baptism by fire. Serena was assigned to a team working on a high-stakes project, a merger with a major tech company. The hours were long, the expectations were high, and the pressure was relentless. Serena threw herself into the work, determined to prove that she belonged. But it wasn't easy. The other interns were competitive, and some of them resented her for being handpicked by Raymond Holt. They whispered behind her back, questioning her qualifications and mocking her background. Serena tried to ignore them, but the constant scrutiny wore on her. One afternoon, as she was reviewing financial reports, Langford approached her desk. "Miss Carter," he said, his tone sharp, "I need you to prepare a presentation for the board. They want an update on the merger, and I expect it to be flawless." Serena nodded, her heart racing. This was her chance to prove herself. She spent the next 2 days working tirelessly, analyzing data, and crafting a compelling narrative. When the day of the presentation arrived, she was nervous but ready. The boardroom was intimidating, with its long oak table and floor-to-ceiling windows. The board members were a mix of seasoned executives, their expressions unreadable. Serena took a deep breath and began her presentation. She spoke confidently, her voice steady as she outlined the benefits of the merger and addressed potential risks. She backed up her arguments with data, her analysis thorough and well-reasoned. When she finished, the room was silent. Then one of the board members, a woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, nodded. "Impressive work, Miss Carter. You've clearly done your homework." Serena felt a surge of relief, but she kept her expression neutral. "Thank you." Langford, who had been watching from the corner of the room, looked less pleased. He didn't say anything, but the tension in the room was palpable. After the meeting, Raymond called Serena into his office. She entered cautiously, unsure of what to expect. "You did well today," he said, his tone neutral. The board was impressed. Serena nodded. "Thank you." Raymond studied her for a moment, his gaze calculating. "I told you this wouldn't be easy, but you've proven that you can handle it." Serena met his eyes, her resolve unwavering. "I'm not here to play games, Mr. Holt. I'm here to learn, to grow, and to make a difference." Raymond's lips twitched, almost like a smile. "Good, because the real challenge is just beginning." As the weeks went by, Serena continued to excel. She threw herself into every project, determined to prove that she belonged at Holt Dynamics. But the more she succeeded, the more she became aware of the darker side of the company. She saw how decisions were made, not based on what was right, but on what was profitable. She saw how people like Langford manipulated the system to their advantage, and how those who didn't fit the mold were pushed aside. One evening, as she was working late, she overheard a conversation between Langford and another executive. They were discussing layoffs, thousands of employees who would lose their jobs as part of a cost-cutting measure. Serena's heart sank. She had always known that the corporate world was ruthless, but hearing it firsthand was a different story. She thought about Daniel, about the way Raymond had left him out in the rain. She thought about her mother, who had worked so hard to provide for her, and she realized that she couldn't be a part of a system that valued profits over people. The next morning, Serena requested a meeting with Raymond. She entered his office with a sense of determination, her head held high. "I've made a decision," she said, her voice steady. "I can't continue working here." Raymond raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. "And why is that?" "Because I don't agree with the way this company operates," Serena replied. "I can't be a part of something that hurts people." Raymond leaned back in his chair, his gaze sharp. "You think you can change the world, Miss Carter?" "Maybe not the whole world," Serena said, "but I can start with myself." Raymond studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. But remember this, the world doesn't reward kindness. It rewards strength." Serena met his gaze, her resolve unwavering. "Then I'll be strong, but I'll also be kind." As Serena walked out of Holt Dynamics for the last time, she felt a sense of relief. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she had made the right choice. She had stepped into a world of power and privilege, and she had walked away with her integrity intact. But her journey was far from over. The lessons she had learned at Holt Dynamics would stay with her, shaping the person she was becoming. And as she looked out at the city skyline, she knew that this was only the beginning. Serena's first days at Holt Dynamics were a baptism by fire. The corporate environment was cold and unforgiving, and she quickly realized that she was seen as an outsider. Philip Langford, a senior executive, openly doubted her abilities, while Nora Winters watched her every move with a calculating gaze. Despite the challenges, Serena proved herself during a high-stakes meeting with Orion Group, a crucial partner for Hold Dynamics. She presented a proposal that not only saved the deal but also impressed Richard Vaughn, Orion CEO. Her success earned her the respect of her colleagues, but it also made her a target. Just as Serena began to feel like she was making progress, she was framed for leaking confidential company documents. The evidence pointed directly at her, and she was summoned to a meeting with the board. Serena knew she was being set up, but she had no proof. Nora Winters, however, came to her defense. Nora revealed that the leaked email had been sent from a proxy address, suggesting that someone had framed Serena. Raymond gave Nora 48 hours to find the real culprit, and Serena knew she had to fight to clear her name. Nora and Serena worked together to uncover the truth. They discovered that Eric Calloway, a senior executive, had orchestrated the leak to manipulate Hold Dynamics' stock price. Calloway had bet against the company, planning to profit from the resulting scandal. When confronted, Calloway tried to deny his involvement, but the evidence was undeniable. Raymond fired him on the spot, and Serena's name was cleared. The experience solidified Serena's resolve to fight against the corrupt practices within Hold Dynamics. Serena's relationship with Raymond became increasingly strained. She confronted him about the company's decision to lay off thousands of employees as part of a merger. Raymond defended his actions, arguing that difficult decisions were necessary for the company's survival. But Serena couldn't accept this. She believed that businesses had a responsibility to their employees and the community. The confrontation ended with Serena resigning from Hold Dynamics, determined to forge her own path. After leaving Hold Dynamics, Serena faced an uncertain future. She had no money, no connections, and no protection. But she had something more important: her will to make a difference. She began working on a new project, one that would challenge the status quo and provide opportunities for those who had been forgotten by the system. Richard Vaughn, impressed by Serena's integrity, reached out to her. He offered to support her new venture, recognizing the potential for real change. Together, they laid the foundation for what would become Orion Carter Enterprises. Years later, Serena stood on the stage of the newly opened Carter Holt Foundation. The foundation was a testament to her belief that kindness and opportunity could change lives. It provided support for those who had been marginalized, offering them a chance to rise above their circumstances. Daniel, now a young man, stood beside her. He had grown into a confident and determined individual, no longer the boy who had been abandoned in the rain. Together, they had built something meaningful, something that would outlast them both. At the foundation's opening ceremony, Serena was surprised to see Raymond Holt in the crowd. He had come to witness the impact of her work, and for the first time, there was a sense of mutual respect between them. Raymond acknowledged that Serena had succeeded on her own terms, without compromising her values. Serena knew that her journey wasn't about defeating Raymond or Hold Dynamics. It was about proving that there was another way, a way that prioritized people over profits. Serena's story became a beacon of hope for those who had been overlooked by society. She had shown that one act of kindness could spark a chain reaction, leading to profound change. The Carter Holt Foundation continued to grow, touching countless lives and proving that even in a world driven by power and money, there was room for compassion and integrity. As Serena looked out at the crowd gathered for the foundation's opening, she felt a sense of fulfillment. She had come a long way from the girl who had sat in a small diner, studying by the light of a flickering fluorescent bulb. And she knew that her journey was far from over. There were still battles to fight, still lives to change. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of pride, knowing that she had made a difference. Serena's story didn't end with the foundation's opening. It continued to inspire others, spreading like ripples in a pond. People from all walks of life began to see the power of kindness, the potential for change, when someone chose to stand up for what was right. Daniel, now a successful young man, often spoke about the impact Serena had on his life. He had gone from being a boy abandoned in the rain to a confident individual with a bright future. And it all started with one act of kindness on a cold, rainy night. Serena's journey was a testament to the idea that no matter how small the act, kindness has the power to change lives. And sometimes, it can even change the world.